I know this makes me sound a little skeptical. I know God's there to forgive, but I just can't get to that point. It's like I can't get through. And let me show you what I mean. I think you'll get the picture. Dear Lord.
Boy, is God ticked off at you.
There, did you hear that? There's more. God, I've got this problem.
I'm so ashamed of you. I don't know what to say. You just wait until your father gets home, young man.
God, I really need to talk about something with you.
You did what? With whom?
See what I mean? Confession's static. It's like interference whenever I start to pray for forgiveness. I've pretty much given up. I haven't been in confession since I was a kid. I had this friend, Petey. His folks sent him to Catholic school, so I figured he had all the answers. But I'll never forget what he told me about God. We were on our way to confession.
So you can't come out at all tomorrow?
I have to stay for the whole weekend. You know, none of this would have happened if my stupid sister hadn't told on me.
Your parents would have found out anyway.
How? The cat was fine after a few minutes.
Your mom would have found cat hairs in the dryer. You can't put a cat in the dryer without leaving some evidence.
Well, you should have heard it. At first it was meow, thump, meow, thump, meow, thump. But then it was just thump, thump, thump.
But the cat's okay now.
She's fine. I mean, wouldn't you think a cat named Fluffy would do okay in a dryer?
Your parents must be really ticked at you.
They are. That's why I'm going to confession.
God must be really, really ticked at you.
God? Why would he be mad at me?
God's always mad at you for something. I mean, if your parents are mad at you, what do you think God's going to be?
So maybe I shouldn't go to confession.
Well, I think you should say a couple of Hail Marys before.
Well, how many do you think I should say?
Well, for a cat in the dryer, maybe 25. Maybe even 50.
But by the time I had finished saying my 50 Hail Marys, the priest had left the confessional. But as I was saying my 50 Hail Marys, I kept hearing the static.
Boy, is God ticked at you.
So by the time I had finished, as I got older, I just stopped going altogether. It wasn't cool. Besides, Saturday afternoons were a very busy time. I had a part-time job, and I had to study real hard. I wasn't too good in math, and I was trying to get a scholarship for college. I studied really hard.
I'm so ashamed of you. What am I going to do?
I'm sorry, Mom. I tried my best, really.
Well, you can't just forget about that scholarship now. With scores like that, you'll be lucky to get into summer school. Your father has been slaving away in the factory just so you can go to college. And what do? You throw it right back at him with your lousy grades. Is that any way to treat us?
Well, I thought about going to confession, but I didn't really feel as if I had done anything wrong. I really had tried my best. But when I tried to talk to God about it, all I got was this static.
I'm so ashamed of you.
The final straw came right before I went into the Army. It was the day before I was scheduled to leave for basic training. My mother had been nagging me for a month, and I decided that maybe it was a good idea to make a new beginning. In those days, our church held confessions on Saturday afternoons. There were 2 confessionals in the church, and you could usually tell which priest was in which box by the size of the lines outside. Father Bob, the young associate, had a reputation for being really gentle, so his line was always the longest. But Father O'Reilly, the pastor, he was a different story.
You did what? With who?
You see, Father O'Reilly had a reputation for being somewhat strong-minded and hot-tempered. On top of it all, he was somewhat hard of hearing. So in the confessional, not only did you risk feeling the heat, the pains of hell, but you also had to talk above the normal, acceptable confessional whisper. I guess I don't have to tell you which line I got into. Well, there I was, the very last person in line. I tried to remember what I was supposed to say. I knew the beginning part. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. But I couldn't remember what came next. I tried saying it over to myself, but nothing, just more static. Then I remembered the stack of missals and prayer books in the hallway at the back of the church. It's got to be in there, I thought. I can casually stroll to the vestibule, look up what to say, and then I'll be right back. I was still the last person in line, so who would know? I was beginning to feel better already. I looked through 2 or 3 books, but didn't find anything. So I thought, hey, what am I worried about? He's a young guy. He's not much older than I am. He'll probably just chuckle to himself and help me through. The little light on the door was green, so I went in. Too bad that while I had been in the back of the church, I hadn't noticed Father O'Reilly come to relieve the associate.
What? Speak up, will you?
Bless me. Bless Father, I mean,
What's your name? Why don't you know how to make a good confession?
well, I mean, bless me, Father, for I've
Speak up. Just tell me your sins.
well,
You did what? With who?
I don't even remember how that ended. I just ran. I ran right out of the church. And every time I tried after that to tell God that I was sorry, or even to talk to God, there was static.
Boy, is God ticked at you.
I'm so ashamed of you.
You did what? With who?
And that's where things are today. You can probably understand why I don't get too excited about confession anymore. There's just too much static.
You
I'm so
did
ashamed
what?
of you.
With who?
This is a reading from the book of Matthew. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, if my brother keeps on sinning against me, how many times do I have to forgive him? 7 times? No, not 7 times, answered Jesus, but 70 times 7, because the kingdom of heaven is like this. Once there was a king who decided to check on his servants' accounts. He had just begun to do so when one of them was brought in who owed him millions of dollars. The servant did not have enough to pay back his debt, so the king ordered him to be sold as a slave, with his wife and his children and all that he had in order to pay the debt. The servant fell on his knees before the king. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay you everything. The king felt sorry for him, so he forgave him the debt and let him go. Then the man went out and met one of his fellow servants, who owed him a few dollars. He grabbed him and started choking him. Pay back what you owe me, he said. His fellow servant fell down and begged him, be patient with me and I will pay you back. But he refused. Instead, he had him thrown into jail until he should pay the debt. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were very upset and went to the king and told him everything. So he called the servant in. You are a worthless slave, he said. I forgave you the whole amount you owed me just because you asked me to. You should have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had mercy on you. The king was very angry and he sent the servant to jail to be punished until he should pay back the whole amount. And Jesus concluded, that is how my Father in heaven will treat every one of you unless you forgive your brother from your heart.
You know, I hope you didn't get the impression before that I'm against confession. You know, hey, it's a sacrament, right? And even though I don't go myself, I still think it's important for my kids to go. You know, and anyway, it's mostly just for the kids anyway. I mean, adults don't really spend a whole lot of time worrying about forgiveness, right? Oh, great. Just what I need. I'm not speeding. What the heck? Oh, boy. God, please help me. I really don't have time for this. Hello, officer.
May I see a license and registration, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Was I, speeding?
I'll answer your questions after I see a license and registration, sir.
Well, it's here someplace. Here it is.
Thank you. I'll be back in a moment.
Oh, this is great. Just great. Why isn't he at Dunkin' Donuts with the rest of them? My friend Charlie's going to kill me. We've been trying to get this court reserved for over a month, and now I'm going to be late. This is just what I need.
Here are your papers, sir. Do you realize that you were traveling the wrong way down a one-way street?
Am I? No, sir, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't see any sign.
Well, sir, the sign is clearly posted. You're lucky there wasn't much traffic tonight.
Officer, I'm very sorry. Usually I'm a very careful driver. I assure you this won't happen again.
I believe that you are, sir, so I'm just going to give you a warning this time. But please, sir, exercise a little more caution in the future.
Yes, sir. Thank you, officer. Boy, that was a close one. A one-way street, huh? If the city would get out here and trim this hedge a little bit, maybe someone might be able to see the sign. Geez, I better call Charlie at the club. Boy, is he going to be ticked. Hello? Hi, this is Mr. Patterson. Is Charlie Banks there? That's right. Yeah, I know our reservation is for tonight. Yes, thank you. I know we're late. Is he there? What? Are you sure? Well, has he called? Okay, thanks. What an idiot. Where is he? Ring, ring.
Hello?
Where the hell are you?
Who is this? Tom, is that you?
Look, Charlie, why aren't you here? Have you forgotten our game tonight?
Oh, geez, Tom, I'm sorry. I thought it was next week. Look, I must have written it down wrong. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, a lot of good that does me. Here I am, sitting at the gym, and you're not even coming.
Look, I'm really sorry. Ginny's mom is in the hospital, and I'm stuck here with the kids.
Yeah, we've all got our own problems.
Look, I'm really sorry, buddy. Look, I'll make another reservation, and we'll have dinner afterwards, on me. What do you say?
I don't think so, Charlie. I'm pretty busy. Besides, your attitude's a little too irresponsible for me. So I think maybe you should choose someone else like this next man over here.
You did a great policeman, but you're going to make a great policeman. Just sit down here. Sit down, you can't. Okay? All right, let's go.
What am I supposed to do? Is there something I'm supposed to say?
Stop, I think.
Hello? Now what happens?
Come on, be creative.
Okay. So, what did you do that was so bad you had to come in here?
Well, I feel pretty down about the way I treated my friend Pat yesterday.
Well, why? What did you do?
Well, you see, we had agreed to meet at the mall for lunch and shopping. I don't get the chance to take many days off, and I really have time to see Pat. So I was really looking forward to this.
And?
So I got to the restaurant early and made sure we got the best table right near the fountain. It was going to be perfect. She never showed up. I sat there by that fountain for 2 hours by myself. She never called or anything.
Well, what did you do about it?
I got on that phone and gave her a piece of my mind. I really let her have it and I hung up on her. And later I found out why she couldn't make it, and now I feel terrible.
How could you be so insensitive? That was a terrible way to...
Thanks, you never have to do this.
That was a terrible way to react. I thought this woman was your friend. Some friend you are. How can you live with yourself?
Hey, wait a minute, this isn't how it goes.
Of course it is. This is confession. You tell me your sins and I yell at you, don't you?
When was the last time you went?
What does that have to do with anything?
Wait a minute, I'm going to interrupt you. I think it would help if you were a little less angry and maybe a little more helpful and supportive and gentle and helpful and yeah.
Well, since when is confession helpful?
Well,
You know.
just go on. Just try to, tone it down a little here and see.
Okay.
Why don't you pretend that I'm your daughter?
Oh, I couldn't do that.
Come on, let's try it.
Okay.
Daddy, I'm really upset, and I need your help. I did a really mean thing to my friend Patty, and now I'm afraid she won't be my friend anymore.
Oh, honey, don't get so upset. It sounds as though you really care about your friendship.
I do.
And I bet she feels the same way. So why don't you make the first move by calling her? Then you can apologize and show her how much you really care. That's what I do.
Thank you. I really feel better now.
Okay, thank you, Fawn. Thank you, Carol.
5 of us would troop down to the church and we'd line up. And you know, the big thing was always telling the same thing. You know, always going in there with the same baggage, you know, and saying, and God, you say, wow. Well, that was in some way a little Jansenistic, you know, a little bit of the scrupulousness of the church at that time. We had our laundry list. And today it's a new understanding, you know, of a loving God, but also the need that we have within us to tell God that we're sorry. And that's what you're trying, not in a laundry list type thing. Because your children can commit sin. And they need, and even in small things, it isn't like they've turned their back. You know what they call mortal, you know the thing pre-Vatican, mortal sin? Well, you know what mortal sin means? It means turning your back upon God. It's called, and Tom Duston, our deacon, is here, who's in theology and is probably all ready to burst and tell what it's all about. It's the fundamental option where a person turns to commit a mortal sin, you know, to break the friendship between myself and God. I have to turn my back completely. And I don't do that in the things. Your children don't do that. They don't. They love God, but they're human. We're all the victims of original sin. And there's attractions out there. There's all that growing that has to be done. But it's a beautiful thing for a child and yourself to be able to go to God and say, I'm sorry, to receive this life, sharing in His grace in order to bring life to other people, that we don't get hung up on those things that sometimes hang us up for the rest of our lives. We hold on to those hurts when we're very young. We need to let them go and to live free. So Eileen and Carol, what's our next process in this?
We've already messed up.
No, to change your attitude, a new understanding. Rather than becoming negative or walking away from it, to realize that the church is taking a new look at this sacrament. And in the sacrament of reconciliation, as in any sacrament, we meet the Lord. And a lot of the past is over with. You have to keep up with your study, your discussions, your reflection, of where God is in our world, where God is in on our journey. And it has to be a thing of love. And the sacrament of reconciliation has to be a time of love. Where in faith now, in faith, that you believe that you meet the Lord at this moment when you come to tell the Lord that you're sorry. I would love to have, it's like changing the environment, and it's working, I think, in our community. Instead of having people fearful of one another, frightened of the priests, that there's an openness and there's a love. You know, I go down through and I don't shake hands for the most time. The people, because I believe that they're my brothers and sisters in Christ, and that Jesus talks about embracing another one person with a holy kiss. And if we're coming out of the Vatican town, and I'm a model, and I take the risk of going down there and being rejected by people because they can't handle a person touching them or otherwise. I understand in certain cases. But what I'm trying to do is to show there's a new way of living in love relationships. And we have to be open and we have to be vulnerable. To change attitudes, though, change the environment, change the whole environment of our community is a challenge, and that's what I think we're doing. But you're a cog in that whole thing, you know, in dealing with your small children. That you also, each one of us, try to make the change, to look at each other and look at God in a loving relationship. I spoke to the young couples this morning in baptism, and I said, your experience of church was mostly fearful. They all shared it. And I don't want that kind of church as fearfulness. There's enough castle out there where you're living where you're working. And when you come to church, as church, I want it to be a loving time where you meet the Lord. And our experiences of going to offer the Mass has to be a loving experience and a faith experience, that I'm being nourished and you're being nourished. When you go to the sacrament of reconciliation, that you don't go in there in a fearful way. You go in there as a loving way. And the church gives you the option of going in there and facing and talking to the priest, really not realizing that you're talking to the Lord, and the priest is going to, because he's been given that power by Jesus, take away any sins, and that that's the faith, your journey. And so I think this afternoon for all of us is kind of learning how to change your attitude, you know. So you won't, as I started off, don't pass on that nonsense to your children that we grew up with. It was nonsense. I think the church realized that at the Vatican Council and has asked us to change, to make it a loving experience, not fearful, not frightening, but also, I think the worst danger that could come out of it is your children could grow up not having a sense of sin. There is wrong in the world, and they can do wrong. They can be hateful to their brothers and sisters. They can steal. All those things, that's sin. Not big sin, but that's, in order to tell them those are wrong. And that's why they go. To tell God they're sorry. Small things, but they're learning to be able, to be able to say it and to realize that God is there. So I think it's you people have to pass that on. Yes.
Father, I got a question for you. You keep referring to the way the church taught us in the past is nonsense. Okay, that's the way we were taught. And you keep referring that it's nonsense. How do we know that what the future is going to teach our children's children, that they're not looking at what we're teaching them as nonsense?
Well, I don't say what we're taught was nonsense is the way it may be when we look back upon it, but I think we carry within myself those fears. And I don't think that's what Jesus wants us to be. He wants us to be in loving relationship with Him and with one another, but also realizing that we are human, that we can falter, we can fail, I can sin. And I need to tell you that I love you and I'm sorry. You in your relationship with your husband, that sometimes you don't love, and you say, I'm sorry. Well, that's what I do with the Lord on my journey. And I think that's what reconciliation is about. It's a loving time, not a fearful and frightening, where I think I grew up that way.
Can I share something?
Sure.
I think, some of us have the sense that this is a brand new thing that the church is doing, and it really isn't. It's more of a renewed thing. If you look back at the gospel message and you look back to the story, to the roots of our faith, I think that's what Vatican II is about. It's looking back. What did Jesus say? How would Jesus have responded? What is Jesus asking us to do? And then renewing and going back to the roots of what our faith is all about. I think kind of in the middle, that's when things kind of got clogged up a little bit. And we'll always need to go back and look at our roots.
And the church always needs to be renewed. Maybe the choice of words of nonsense is not the best word, but I think all of us grew up in that kind of church where a lot of things came in on it, very, very narrow, scrupulous way. And the church needed to be renewed, and it renewed itself. And we have to know what the church is helping us, to take a new look, a new focus. So I think this has been a wonderful afternoon. You people having the opportunity to take a look at your faith.
Okay, what we'd like to do now is close a little reflection. I want you to take away the 3 C's today. Conversion, confession, and celebration. What do we celebrate? We celebrate God's unconditional love for us. And we celebrate His mercy for us. And we celebrate our love now preparing for first reconciliation. Think back to the day that he or she was born or adopted. And remember that day itself, the time of year, the weather. Relive the very first moment you saw your baby and how you felt. Revisit the occasion of your child's baptism. Did he or she cry? Did you? Did you feel that it was important for your child to be baptized? And what difference did you think that baptism would make in his or her life? Bring into your memory the picture of some of the people who shared that happiness, that very special day with you and your child. Remember these milestones in your child's development. His or her first steps alone. What was the first word he or she spoke? Remember your earliest talks about God and the learning of mealtime and bedtime prayers. Is there one of those that touched you especially? Your child's first day of school. How did that go? Did he or she cry? Or was he or she too eager and grown up? Did you cry? You soon got used to the idea of your baby in school, didn't you? And weren't you the proud parent when your child learned to read and write? Remember your child's first religion classes and the stories about Jesus that your child eagerly shared with you. Did your child show signs of spiritual growth too? Over the years, people, relatives, friends, neighbors, teachers have said nice things about your child. Think about some of the pleasant things they have told you. And what special qualities have you yourself discovered in him or her? Perhaps yesterday or today your child tried to tell you in some way how much he or she loves you. Maybe with a look, a word, a hug, simply by taking hold of your hand. Your child's first communion day and how beautiful and innocent he or she looked after receiving the body and blood of Christ. You should have felt very proud, and you shared in his or her joy, for it was you who prepared your child for that very special day. Now, in your heart of hearts, thank God for the precious gift of your child. And join with each other in asking God's blessing on all our families who have been preparing this sacrament since their child's baptism, and who are now entering the final phases of this preparation. Let's join hands as a symbol of our traveling together this next phase by the Sacred Heart.